Welcome to Edinburgh. Behind me is the statue of Greyfriars Bobby. Now, I'm sure you've heard the story, and it's one of the most enchanting, one of the most charming, one of the most uplifting stories that's ever been told. In fact, I often tear up when I tell it. But recently, I've become aware of the story of a second Greyfriars Bobby. And believe me, it's just as enchanting, just as charming, and just as uplifting as the original. So today, join me as we head to Greyfriars Kirk, and I'm going to tell you the story of both Bobbys. You can see Bobby's statue has a really shiny nose, and that's because all the visitors to Edinburgh think that it's good luck to rub Bobby's nose. However, this is an urban myth started by a travel company only a couple of decades ago, and it's sort of taken root. Ask an Edinburgh resident and they will always say, please don't rub Bobby's nose. So let's walk past Greyfriars pub, and that'll take us into Greyfriars Kirkyard. Here we go, Greyfriars Kirkyard. And through the gates. There you are, directly ahead of us is the grave of the original Greyfriars Bobby. But before we look at the grave itself and the fabulous inscription on the grave, let me tell you the story of the original Greyfriars Bobby. Way back in the 1850s, a gentleman by the name of John Gray, known locally as Old Jock, became a night watchman for the Edinburgh police, and at the same time he adopted a Skye Terrier whom he called Bobby. Over the years, they became the best of friends, but unfortunately, after a few years together, Old Jock sadly died. Old Jock was buried here in Greyfriars Kirkyard. For 14 long years, until his own death, Bobby used to sit here on his master's grave, day and night, except when he used to go into Edinburgh town to be fed by kindly shopkeepers. What devotion that little dog had to his best friend, John Gray. Okay, let's have a look at the inscription on Bobby's grave. I absolutely adore this inscription. Let his loyalty and devotion be a lesson to us all. There you go. Almost tearing up again reading that inscription. Bobby is such an enlightening character. And Edinburgh Council actually erected another statue of Bobby here in the Kirkyard for the 150th anniversary of his death. Absolutely gorgeous. Although it's the resting place of Greyfriars Bobby, Greyfriars Kirkyard is also worth a wander round for these really impressive graves, almost mausoleums in stature. Such a tranquil, historical place right here in the centre of Edinburgh. Well, I'm sure that you've heard the story of Greyfriars Bobby before, but I hope that retelling of the story made you feel a little bit emotional, just like I got emotional telling it. Now, is it possible for there to be a second story about a second Bobby, which is just as enlightening and just as uplifting and just as charming? Well, let me tell you about Bobby from 1961. Back in 1961, Walt Disney Productions made a film telling the story of Greyfriars Bobby. And of course, they had to find a dog actor to play Bobby. And they found a Skye Terrier called Tam. Although after the film was made and released, the dog adopted the name of Bobby. Film star Bobby sadly died in 1974. And he was buried in a field in Dolphington, which is just south of Edinburgh. And on his grave, there was a replica mini statue of the original Greyfriars Bobby. Lovely touch, I thought. But over the years, the site of the grave became overgrown and people lost track of where it was. In 2020, a housing developer called John Wilson was given permission to build houses on the area in which they buried film star Bobby. Now, when he was told that film star Bobby was buried somewhere on the land that he was allowed to build on, he stopped the building of the houses and the search began. And it took them 18 months of dedicated searching, but after 18 months, they found the grave of film star Bobby. And film star Bobby was brought here to Greyfriars Kirk, where the original Bobby is laid to rest. And now film star Bobby has his own cask with his own ashes here in Greyfriars Kirk. And I just think that's absolutely fantastic. Let's go inside the kirk and see the casket of film star Bobby. Let's go inside and have a look. There's a lovely little museum here inside Greyfriars Kirk, and this is where we can find the casket of film star Bobby. Here we go, the story of new Bobby. And there we have the poster of the 1961 film. Such a tiny dog to create such a big fuss. Film star Bobby's casket is made out of the wood of a cherry tree from right outside in Greyfriars Kirkyard. Well, there you have it, the story of the two Bobbys, the original Greyfriars Bobby from the 1850s and film star Bobby from the 1960s into 1974. Both absolutely enchanting stories, charming and uplifting, and always bring a tear to my eye. But tell me, now you've heard the story of both Bobbys, the original and film star Bobby, which one is your favourite? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Rog Vlog. If you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Until the next one, remember, there's always something to see, so get out there and find it.